Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Ducksy Gaming, and the second part of planning a league starter. Now this series from episode 1 is looking at an Ignite Flame Blast Elementalist while using another skill for clear. So when we left the last episode, I'd finished the beginning of Act 5 just to get my clear speed setup going and single target. So we were running a Flame Blast for single target, boosted by a Curse on Hit, Wave of Conviction, and then just Armor Brand with Ellie Prolif for clear. And this did absolutely fine all the way through the campaign on the level 21s. Packs died really quick, and most bosses died with 2 to 3 Flame Blasts. So got through the campaign. Next step was to take the character as it is through third lab and early maps just to see how it got on. And it felt absolutely fine on the campaign gear, and I had really bad campaign gear. I think I went in with 2,300 life, capped resistances, and not a lot else. So at that stage, I could definitely do with upgrading the ones from the level 20 class, but white maps are still pretty comfortable, so it was not anything I was in a rush to do. Realistically, the easiest way to get a big chunk of damage was just to buy 2 Deafening Essences of Anguish to get some big, flat fire damage to spells on the ones. And these were just going to be a very short-term solution, but it just meant that I could then push into early yellow maps and my damage would hold up. So once I got into yellow maps, I just upgraded my gear from the rubbish campaign gear to just some slightly better rares. So, you know, more life, more resistances, but nothing any different to what you'd find and identify in SSF. And then I carried on to early yellow maps with the new ones. Again, this felt really fine for single target, but brands are starting to feel pretty bad for clear already. So you obviously have a delay in activation, and all the damage we do is damage over time. So it can take quite a long time for packs to die and then spread the prolif. And with juicy arch nemesis mobs, I was at massive risk of dying, and it happened a couple of times where I threw a brand, and before it even had a chance to go off, maybe a hasted pack or something with repeating spells just absolutely obliterated me. So what I did then was I switched my Wave of Conviction and put the prolif in there and just dumped the brands all together. So in terms of Wave of Conviction, it didn't have any damage supports. It had Wave of Conviction, Curse on Hit, Flammability, and then the Ellie Prolif, but that was absolutely fine for sort of late tier white, early tier yellow maps. And it was then made the decision that the first item that I wanted to go for was a Barracks Respite Ring, as that's going to provide the Prolif for me. It spreads it way more, and also I can then add a damage link into Wave of Conviction. Now on day 1, these can be pricey, sort of 20 to 30 chaos, but I've always got a plan at league start to make at least 100, 200 chaos, whether that's from heist or spamming league mechanics. So I'm not too worried about adding that to the build. And it definitely helps. It's not something that's needed. As I say, if it turned out that it was 3x or whatever on day 1, it's not needed. It just helps with clear. And then I bought a basically 5-link chest, which would be a couple of C at league start. So I could then have a 5-link for single target. And then yellow mapping overall felt, well, amazing with Barracks Respite. You literally just Wave of Conviction, everything on the screen pretty much dies. And then Flame Blast was killing bosses in 1 to 2 activations. So I basically just carried on farming yellow maps, getting some currency, kind of simulating completion, because obviously I've got my Atlas completed anyway. But I was just going through as if it was in a league start scenario. And it felt absolutely comfortable. So I decided that as this is kind of a preliminary test, I'd then go and get a 6-link corrupted chest just with the right colors, just to see how it performs, still with these wands and just a Barracks Respite Ring and nothing else. I also did Uber Lab because on a 6-link it felt absolutely easy to do. So completed that and then decided to take the Aegis Ascendancy for defenses. And it did make the build feel really safe, but I could feel that maybe at top end damage was being harmed massively by not taking the Shock Ascendancy. So I tested out some red tier maps, lower tier on the one setup with a 6-link and then a 4-link clear, and it felt absolutely fine. But single target was starting to fall off a tiny bit. Clear still felt okay. So it's then I need to look at the next part of the build, and that's going to be a 5-link Martyr of Innocent Staff. These aren't particularly expensive. I think 5 links were 20 to 30 chaos on day 1 last league, and they never really changed that much. And then a 6-link Corrupted Chest, which would be, say, 20 to 30 C. So the total investment for the build, as I'm then going to go and tackle bosses, was less than 100 C. And I think the idea would be to heist to get this, and then just go into maps fully ready and just blast through all the content. And with the 5-link staff and 6-link in the chest, the build just ramped up massively. Single target was noticeably better. I also used a Vile Flame Blast instead of just Flame Blast, and that's just a nice quick button to press if you get overwhelmed with influence mobs or things like that. And then this was kind of the setup that I was looking to go with. But what I wanted to do was try a few different things out. So I tried getting a Zoth's Blood just to see what that was like, because obviously covering enemies in Ash is going to add a lot of damage to the Ignite. But it gives you Avatar of Fire, which is not great because Wave of Conviction converts some Fizz to Lightning. Because we're Elementalists, all our damage shock. So if we do get other sources of elemental damage, they're not going to do anything because we can't do anything other than fire damage. And looking at items, just the bog standard Zoth's Heart would be better before the upgrade. But again, covered in Ash, you need to get hit for it to happen. And the idea of this build is that you don't really get hit. You stay safe. So I think on POB, this amulet looks amazing because you're going to tick, covered in Ash, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know how often that's actually going to happen. So I just went with a rare amulet. Like bog standard one, nothing on it. Life resistance is stats. And then I anointed Divine Judgment because it's nice and cheap. And then tested another few things out. So I went with like a 6-link Marcher and a 6-link chest to see how that went. And yes, the damage is obviously more, but it's not needed because you don't need a 6-link Wave of Conviction to clear. Even in out T16 red maps with increased LE resistances, it was still absolutely fine. If you come across a pack that's maybe can avoid ailments or has got massive fire resistance, that's what your Flame Blast and your Vile Flame Blast is for. So went in through testing Guardians, and I then went to do Exarch with the setup on the LE Aegis Ascendancy, and I did it, but it just felt too slow. I think I had to do 5 ball phases, which is just too many. I died a couple of times to the ball phases because obviously the more they turn up, the harder they get. And I'm not the best at it anyway. I was very proud that I did the first 2. And then I died. So I completed the fight, but it just felt too slow. So it's at that stage I decided that since it's softcore, we don't need Elemental Aegis. This is not going to be my end of the league build. This is my league start build to get me a nice quick start. So we went and we took the Shock Ascendancy instead, which is Shaper of Storms. Because that makes all your damage shock, and it makes all enemies take 15% increased damage from your hits and your spells and your ignites and everything. And that made a massive difference. Now, I haven't tested Exarch again because I don't have the invitation. I can't be bothered with going buying it. I will give it another test at some point. But going by the other bosses that I've completed, which I'll come on to in a minute, the starter version of Exarch and Eater are going to be an absolute breeze with the build. So once I did Exarch and decided, no, we definitely need Shaper of Storms, then I went and I thought Elder, Shaper, and then I did some more Guardians. Shaper actually felt much more comfortable than Elder because it's only him you have to worry about in the arena. There's a few, balls that you've got to pop with the degens and stuff like that. But all you do, you put a massive ignite on him, you kite him, you ignite him, you kite him. Super, super safe and easy. Now, I did die a couple of times because I switched off in the middle phase, didn't realize one of his degen balls was coming into the protective bubble and it killed me. And then obviously left it right in the middle of the arena and then killed me again the next time. But I got the fight done. Last phase with Deathless, so I think if I hadn't have cocked up the middle phase, it would have been a lot more comfortable. Then I went on to do Elder. And Elder actually didn't feel very nice for a couple of reasons, which I'll come on to in a bit, which are overall problems for the build in terms of trying to do it on a budget. So Elder has a lot more going on in the arena. There's multiple portals, there's multiple ads that are spread out across the whole arena. And although our Wave of Conviction is good for clearing, it's not going to take down a portal quick enough. So you have to use your Flame Blast and your Vile Flame Blast. And when the portals are on 4 different areas, you have to target 2, and then 2, and then there might be some ads that get out of control, and then they start shooting cold degens at you. And I did die a couple of times in this fight, and it did not feel very comfortable. Obviously on softcore, you shouldn't really ever fail it on 6 portals with this setup. But it was not as comfortable as other builds. Like my very budget Lightning Strike build at the beginning of the last league that was probably only a couple of mil DPS felt so much more comfortable because you can clear all the portals really, really quickly. But it was doable. You don't have to do all these fights as a league starter. Like You choose what you want to do as a league starter. Do you want to go into a boss route? If you did, you probably wouldn't go this build. Or do you want to clear maps quickly and sell all your boss maps and stuff like that? And I think that's what I tend to do on league starters. I want to get the first 2 pinnacle bosses down, and then I'm farming maps as quickly as I can, selling everything that drops to then upgrade my build to go and take on some more content. And then that pretty much concluded the testing. It gave me a good enough indication that the build can get the early bosses done and can also map really, really quickly. It does feel really good when you're running through with Wave of Conviction and Barrett's Respite. So there's 2 issues with the build that I need to look to see if we can overcome, but I'm not sure we can on a budget. The first is stuns or interruptions. You 100% need to be stun immune or be able to avoid interruptions when channeling, as soon as you get hit by a big boss, they're going to chunk enough of your health to stun you, and then your channel stops. It doesn't even go off. Your channel just stops, the skill turns off, and you have to go again. And although we get like about a 3 to 4 second ignite, if you're planning on your damage window that you're going to hit an ignite here, then you're going to kite for 3 seconds, then hit one, and they interrupt you and then they cut off where you wanted to go and you've got to move away, it affects your DPS quite a lot, and obviously getting stunned can get you killed. It wasn't really an issue when mapping because you're killing everything before it gets anywhere near you. But for bossing, stuns felt really bad, and I think it's something I'm going to have to try and find a workaround, even if it's getting, majority stun avoid, so that 4 out of 5 times it gets through. But I need to have a look how to do it. So there are some nodes on the tree for avoiding interruptions, but I can only find that you can get up to 30%, and I can't see anywhere that you can get the rest of it, so it seems a bit pointless. The other thing that felt bad, and this was highlighted in the Elder fight, is cast speed. So I haven't really invested in cast speed other than nodes on the tree, because I want to run a Barrett's Respite, and rings is probably where you look to get your cast speed. So then I would need to fit my cast speed and maybe damage over time and other stuff into a rare ring, and that makes that rare ring multiple exalts probably. So I think cast speed is probably something we just have to put up with. It's absolutely not a problem when clearing or tackling map bosses and stuff like that. It's just if you did want to take on stuff like Elder or maybe 10 boss invitations, you're going to definitely want faster cast speed. And that kind of sums up the testing I've done so far. I'm not in any way recommending this build. There's going to be tons of better league starters, but I really enjoy this sort of play style for whatever reason. Maybe I'm a glutton for punishment. And mapping is super, super fun with Wave of Conviction and Barrett's Respite. So now that I've assessed the build and happy it could work, I'm going to do a full league start run where I simulate trade, essentially. So the first run through I've done this time, I was skipping sections because I was like, right, I can do white maps. Let's upgrade the gear. You can do yellow maps. And then when I wanted to go to red maps, I actually transferred my gear to a level 89 Elementalist I had anyway and respec the tree, and basically that was the character. So it's just so I could get it done quickly, because there was no point taking ages getting to like level 90 and then finding out the character's a dud, and I've wasted 2 to 3 days leveling a character that wasn't ever going to be successful. So now I know it can be. I'm going to then do a full trade run where I will only upgrade gear when I've got the currency to do it. The best way I can do it is use prices on PoE Ninja in terms of day 1 and 2. And as I said, I think 100% my strategy is going to be heist, because I only need about 100 chaos, and that will get me my Martyr of Innocence, and it will get me my Barrett's Respite. That's really all I'm after. The only other item I'll probably want to get, and I'm pretty sure they're dirt cheap, is a Careful Planning Jewel. And what this does is just turns intelligence into dex, because dexterity requirements are really, really hard to hit on this build, because we do want to use a couple of dex gems, and that side of the tree, you're not picking up much dexterity. Now, there are a few items that are decent for this build that could be added on if I decided I wanted to take the build a bit further. But what I want to do first is get what's the minimum really I need to do to get the pinnacle bosses down and get maybe Elder and Shaper done. So there's a couple of things that would work. Lizard Crown works really well. You wouldn't think it would be used in an Ignite build, but because all of our damage ignites and all of our damage shocks, the cold resistance doesn't really matter at all, because it's damage you're carrying through to the Ignite that matters. So that can add a good 10% DPS on your Ignite. And then the Maven boots, I forget what they're called, obviously scorch enemies around you. That adds a massive amount of DPS. But the boots don't come with much else, so you just need to make sure you can balance the rest of your stats. The other issue is you're competing with Righteous Fire characters for these boots, and if it doesn't get nerfed, well, it probably will because it was top skill in terms of played last league, but there's going to be loads of people playing it next league as well. These boots were multiple exalts at league start, whereas the league before they were like a chaos or something like that. So they're an option, but they're not needed, and if they're more than say 10 or 20 chaos, I would not consider buying them. And then past that, you're looking at really crafting rare jewelry. So using essences of delirium, I think they are. I forget what ones. One of the special essences gives you 15% damage over time multiplier on your rings. So if you could get that on your other rare ring with maybe something like minus mana to channeling cost, because it is, despite it's a channeling skill, it uses a lot of mana, which is why I was running inspiration in the main links. But inspiration adds LE damage as well. So it is a good gem to run anyway. But I think if you didn't run it, you would definitely run out of mana a lot. That kind of covers this part of the series. So the series is going to continue, but the next one is going to start, as I say, a total fresh run. Again, we'll go from scratch, and then we'll actually build it up as if it was a league starter. I do work. I've got other stuff to do, so it's not going to be particularly quick. It's not going to be something I'm going to have completed in 2 days. It's probably going to take me 1 to 2 weeks to get the whole thing tested and done. And in all honesty, I don't plan on doing anything else this league anyway. So it gives me something to do until we wait for some more announcements. That's it for this video. Thank you again for watching. Take care and see you in the next one.